Good afternoon. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. With me on the panel today via Zoom is Ms. Gail Anderson and Robert Kraus in the boardroom. The assessor today is Mr. Atir Rahan, and our administrative person is Tristan Bradeen. My name is Bill Moransky. I'm also on the panel and will be chairing this hearing. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all of the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the Board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing item 2 on our docket today. Mr. Bradeen, can you please affirm the assessor's and the applicant's testimony?
Of course. Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Atir Rahan.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Grayson Sharples.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give in this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Perfect. Thank you.
I'll be swearing in as well. I might have a comment or two to add, if you don't mind.
Sorry. And then, Mr. Assessor, could you state your full name?
Matthew Barocas.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the first and only item on our docket today is item number 2666 St. James Street. This is an application for revision of the assessed value. Mr. Rahan, you may begin your presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the property we're discussing, the file number is 24451. The roll number is 0700-157-0100. The address is 666 St. James Street. So it has two parts, one commercial, one is residentials. So we can see the classification as 60 and 20. So for the commercial, the assessed value is 2,869,000. And for the residential, it has 21,163,000, which totals up to 24,032,000. So it has a taxable liability. The parcel use is Res M. It has C2 zoning. It has one building, 15 stories, built in 1970 with effective air of 1970 to 1985. It has 221 suites with 23 indoor parking and 129 outdoor parking spots. Moving on to page 2, we have some information regarding the request for income information. The company has been compliant, so this is all good here. There is no subject sale history in the record. So moving on to page 3, we have in our presentation income value summary. As we can see, there are 50 bachelor units, 104 one-bedroom units, and 59 two-bedroom units, and 1 3-bedroom units, totaling up to 214 units. The average monthly rent per unit is coming up at 1,148.27. So I'm gonna read out the apartment and retail separately. So for the apartment, the gross potential rent is coming up at 2,948,757 with the vacancy rate of 2.6%. Using the expense ratio of 55.79%, the NOI is coming up at 1,269,751. And using the capitalization rate of 6%, we value the property at 21,162,517 for the residential part, which makes it 98,892.52 per suite. For the commercial, the gross potential rent is 250,673, using the vacancy rate of 5%. We have the shortfall rate is $7, so it's totaling up to 5,761. Expense ratio of 3%. The NOI for the commercial section comes up to 225,234. Using the capitalization rate of 7.85, the commercial site is valued at 2,869,223, which makes it 174.29 per square foot. Now moving on to page 4, we have some. This is a subject property summary here. The residential income summary. And then we have the retail income summary from using the model. Page 5, we have rent comparables for the subject. As we can see in the rent comparables, the total number of units is ranging from 148 to 310 units. The gross floor area is ranging from 134,520 to 272,528, and the average monthly rent per unit is ranging from $1,187 to $1,792. Using that, subject is at 1148.27. Now moving on to page 6, we have some comparable lease for the subject here. The lease area per square foot is ranging from 1,340 to 5,635, and the net rent per square foot is ranging from 1,550 to $19. Sorry, $21.75 per square foot. Page 7, we have some capitalization rate evidence. Now, this is an example. This is a sample of actual sales that took place during the reference period. The purpose for showing these individual cap rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived cap rates. They are not meant to be comparable specific to the subject property. Page 8, we have capitalization rates of the market. As we can see, the cap rates of the city of Winnipeg. For 20th percentile is 4.75, and for 80th percentile is 5.45. Page 9 has municipal assessment excerpts. Page 10, there's an aerial view of the subject property, which basically shows that it is right opposite of the Polo Park shopping mall. It's on the main St. James Street. We have added some photos of the building here, which exterior photos, a photo showing a outdoor swimming pool on the property. Moving on to page 12, we have some photos of the interiors of the suites, which shows renovated kitchen cabinets, new flooring. We have a photo of bathrooms there. And there's on page 14, there is a description from the website. This property is basically called Towers of Polo Park. It mentions that Polo Park featuring available newly renovated bachelor 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom suites. As I've already mentioned, they are located right opposite of Polo Park shopping mall. And then there's some information more from the website. Is just showing some rates, maps. And then on the last pages, we have some income and expense, actual income and expense, NOI. And then I also like to point one more thing to everyone that if looking at the actual refurbishment of the property from 2022, which is at 160,228.66. And that is, I would like to recommend the board to maintain the current assessment of the total property is 24,032,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sharples, do you have any question on the assessor's presentation?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a few. Just the rent comparables, the apartment rent. So I guess first off, would you agree that comparable 1 would be superior to the subject based on year built and construction class?
I wouldn't say it would be superior because the subject property has had renovations throughout the years on the property.
Okay. Have any of these comparables had done as well? Like have any of the comparables been renovated?
Well, they don't have the effective year of built on the record, so I'm not sure if they have been renovated.
Okay. Would you agree that units with more bedrooms would generally rent for more?
Yes.
So the last 2 comparables here, 3 and 4, they've got quite a few. Well, they've got more 3-bedroom units than the first few. Could that skew the average monthly rent per unit upwards because they have more 3-bedroom units?
Yeah, so basically in general, it would. Now, what happens is we don't have the ideal set of comparables when we're kind of looking for comparables for this property. Because in that neighborhood, this is kind of one of the ideal locations you would find for an apartment, plus the commercial side of it. So being that if you look at comparable 1 and comparable 2, which has like 41 bedrooms and 125 2-bedrooms, the average rent. And now the average rent is kind of a slightly higher than the subject property. And which is comp 2, which has some kind of a similar set of units, 25 bachelors, 168 1-bedrooms, and 117 2-bedroom units, which is, I would say, more closer in terms of the count of suites and the set of suites that is available to the subject, you can see that's 1,212. So, I mean, yeah, it could for 3 bedrooms, but comp 1 and comp 2 are also ideal in terms of the subject.
Okay. And so just looking at the average monthly rent per unit here, so for the subject, that's the assessed monthly rent, correct?
Yes.
And for the others, that's the actual monthly rent.
Yes.
And so how has that been determined? Like, is that the average for every occupied unit, or is this based off financial statements, or where do these average rents come from?
Well, it's what the information the property owners submit on income and miller expense. That's where we get it from.
Okay, so would it include vacant units? Like, would this be just rental income divided by total number of units? Like, would that capture any vacant units?
But it's whatever rent they are assigning to the units where they're occupied and collecting rent. Now, sometimes there's different 1-bedroom units, 1 bedroom with a den, 1 bedroom and no den, larger bathroom, but those are all taken into consideration and averaged out and assigned a rent for the respective bedroom count in our system. That's how
Okay.
it's done.
Okay. Believe that was all for those rent comparables. Just, I guess, looking at the retail leases on the following page. The fourth one here, on Empress Street, would you agree that this would be superior to the subject?
In terms of like, are you talking about the quality or?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a bit newer. It's got a higher wall height. I don't know how much that really matters for retail, but yeah, based off
Yeah, I mean, based on its newer and
year of
the
construction for sure.
quality. So yeah, I would agree that the one on 675 Empress Street is superior in terms of quality. But also it represents in the net rent per square foot, it's $19, which is, if you look back to the subject property leases, and look for 3,000 square feet premise, we've got it at 1,478 for some. So it's quite a bit different.
Okay. I believe that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson, do you have any questions for the assessor?
I apologize, I was on mute. The pictures that you've included of the interior of the apartments, are those, was there an inspection or are those from the website?
Yeah, we did not do any inspection on the property at this time, but these are taken from the website.
Okay. And my other question is in regards to the refurbishment that you mentioned in 2022. Where is that included in your presentation? That figure?
Yes, so if you go all the way down to page 16.
Yeah.
Please. So this is the actual income and expense mailer. Sorry, not the mailer. This is the actual net operating income statement from the development. So in the expenses, there's a line of refurbishment.
Yeah.
And if you just follow it, it has an actual refurbishment expense of 160,000, which suggests there has been major improvements to the property.
There's bathroom refurbishment.
And then there is also, if you follow it down, there's bathroom refurbishment of $21,940. So that's what I mentioned in my presentation.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And my other question is in regards to the vacancy rate. So the vacancy rate, can you just explain to me how that is calculated? Like that, is that all model generated?
It is model generated. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Kraus, any questions for the assessor?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
On page 5, you have your comparables again. And there's nothing under, on the last line, there's heat in rent. There's nothing there, no Y or N. So is heat included there? Or you're not sure?
I'm not sure at this time. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
And on page 7. Capitalization rate evidence. Are you showing apartment blocks here?
These are all apartment blocks. Yes.
So the retail, not sure whether any of these have retail in them or not, or do you?
No.
No.
None of them has the retail.
How would that affect the cap rate if it has retail? Or would it?
I mean, because if you follow on my page 2, we kind of calculate the cap rates for the residential and the commercial section separately.
Okay, yeah.
It's not assigned on total basis, so no, it's not a blended rate at this time.
I see. And you have a cap rate for 6% on the apartments and 7.85 on the retail. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
All right. So the expense information, income and expense information attached is showing, this is for 2022, showing a net operating income, and this is minus, not including non-recoverable expenses below. Or never mind that. But anyways, it's showing at $883,000. And your model is showing $1,269,000. So you're about 50% higher than what the actual was. Is that accurate?
So yeah, I mean, the reason why we're going with the model is based on the expenses that's listed down here, we see that the vacancy has been high, which is correlated, which they are correlating it to the refurbishment here. So I guess while they're renovating, that's the vacancy, it's so high. That's why, I mean, they have the vacancy expense like 6.8% here. So, I mean, that is why there is a big difference in what the actual operating income and what the model is calculating.
So in previous years, it would be closer to what the model has. Is that what you're implying then? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably return to this conversation actually when we get to the applicants brief, because they do have the 2021 and 2020 mailers in it as well. And we'll be able to see a direct correlation between the vacancy rate and what they're spending on renovating the suites. So that's why we just we went with model. It's a bit clearer when we have all the mailers in front of us, not just the 1 year.
Okay, I have no further questions. Mr. Sharples, you may begin your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll begin on page 3 of our submission. So we've kind of already covered the description of the property and everything. So just make note the current assessment amount is for 24,032,000, and we're asking that the board consider reducing this to 20,241,000. Pages 4 and 5, we just have the income breakdown that we receive. And page 6 is where we summarize our request here. So kind of a lot going on in this table. The 2 columns on the left is the current assessment. They're kind of a gray shade, if you can tell. And then the 3 columns on the right side is our request. So we got the total in the middle and the apartment and the retail portions. So we'll be requesting a slight change to the effective gross income for the retail portion, and then changes to the potential income, vacancy, and expense allowance for the apartment portion. And so this will all be based off the financial statements and actual performance of the property. And so from that, we got a value of just over 18 million for the apartments, just over 2 million for the retail portion. And the sum of those is our 20,241,000. Page 7 is just the assessment map and satellite image. Just has some street view photos of the property. So page 9 is where we begin our valuation, and we've started off with the retail portion here. So we've taken a look at the rent roll, which we have included at the end of our submission. And I'll try to simplify this a little bit because we kind of have a lot of numbers in here and don't want to make things too confusing. But this is from the rent roll as of the valuation date. So this was April 1st, 2023. And this property is achieving gross rents that range from $17.63 per square foot to $28 per square foot. And so these are all gross rents, except for unit C154 there, the CKLY fashion, that's the semi-gross one. But so because these are all gross rents, there's no recoveries for stuff like utilities, property taxes, common areas, repairs and maintenance. And so we've tried to determine the actual rental revenue that's being generated. So for that, we got to take out the commercial expenses. And so these income statement, retail and the apartment portion. So we can't really separate that out. So what we've done is we've used the assessed operating expenses of $7 per square foot for the gross rents. And then for the semi-gross one, we've used $3.50 per square foot. So we've subtracted that from the rental rate to come up with these adjusted rental rates. These are in the column second from the right in our table. So our adjusted rental rates then range from $12.27 per square foot up to $21 per square foot. And so using those adjusted rental rates, we've calculated the adjusted revenue for these retail spaces. So again, that's just the adjusted rate times the area. And from that, we've got an adjusted revenue of $174,439. And so the table above, this is only for the occupied spaces within the building. So they used to have River City Sports in this building, and they occupied 6,781 square feet, and they moved out in November of 2022. So that kind of created a vacancy concern at this property. But since our adjusted revenue here only looks at the occupied spaces, this would be the effective gross income. So kind of the first line up here, we do have a note of what the assessed PGI and EGI were. So the assessed effective gross income of the commercial portion was just over $238,000. And we've calculated the commercial EGI to be $174,439. So quite a bit lower than what was assessed. And so that's the change we're requesting for the retail portion. Starting on page 10, this is where we look at the multifamily portion. So yeah, we have the financial statements. Once again, they're at the end of this submission, if you want to look at them in its entirety. But we've summarized it in tables over the next few pages. So we've looked at 2020, 2021, and 2022. And so based on these financials, the actual potential revenue is $2,934,788. So this was calculated just by taking the total revenue here and adding back in that vacancy expense. And so using that vacancy expense of 210,834, if we take that and divide it by that potential revenue, we end up with an actual vacancy rate of 7.18%. So again, that is higher than the 2.6 that has been assessed. And we can see this has kind of been the same case year over year. So 2020, their vacancy expense was 158,000. That would be a vacancy rate of just over 5%, I believe. 2021, they had a pretty large vacancy expense, just under 500,000. I think that would be closer to 15% vacancy. And then, yeah, this year's is 7.18. So we do kind of see that year over year, the vacancy has been quite a bit higher relative to the assessed 2.6. And then, yeah, so the effective gross income for this would be just over 2.7 million, which is about $150,000 less than what was assessed. And then so we kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but looking at the expenses on page 11. So we've reviewed these financial statements and we've removed what we would consider to be these non-operating expenses. So we've pulled out the refurbishments. We've pulled out stuff like repairs, painting, flooring, that kind of stuff we did take out. Because as we kind of mentioned through questioning earlier, like if we included all those expenses, the expense ratio would be 71.4%, which is just too high. So I think what they're doing is the vacancy is higher, and when those units become vacant, they renovate them. And so we've kind of pulled out the expenses related to that. And so in pulling those operating expenses for 2022 of a little over $1.5 million. And then just the top of page 12 here, we have these additional expenses. So for 2022, those totaled about 209,000. And so the total expenses, the operating expenses plus these additional ones, is just a little bit over $1.7 million. And so divided by the EGI we calculated, which was just over the 2.7 million. And so from that, we've calculated an expense, which is above the assessed expense ratio of 55.79. And Our request, however, is 60% for expenses. And so we calculated that by using the assessed vacancy rate of 2.6% rather than our request of 7.18%. And that's just because at 63% expenses, that still seems a little bit high. So it made sense using the assessed vacancy that got us to 60%. We feel that is a reasonable expense ratio to use based on the performance of the property. And we do have the calculations at the bottom of page 12 here for reference. And page 13, just to summarize, we're requesting a change to the effective gross income. And this was based off the actual rents that are in place. Although they are gross, we have adjusted them and calculated the value. And because that calculation did not include vacant units, this would be our effective gross income. So that's how we arrived at that 174,000 for the retail effective gross income. And then the apartments, there's slight change to the potential income. And then the actual vacancy allowance would be 7.18%. And then, as I just mentioned, the expense allowance of 60%. So based on that, we've calculated a total value of $20,241,000. We would ask the board to consider reducing the assessment to that value. And then just, again, on the remaining pages, we have all the rent rolls and financial statement. For anyone to reference. And so with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rahan and or Mr. Barakis, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have a few questions, please.
Sure.
Okay, so now can we take our attentions to page number 62, please? So on page 62, we have the net operating income statement, as we've already mentioned. So I'd like to ask the applicant that, would you agree that when the refurbishment expense, which is 29,000 for 2020, is lower, the vacancy rate is closer to the market? Would you agree with that?
Closer, yes, but still higher.
Do you have any idea when did they start?
See, it is still 5.2%.
But comparatively, if like 2021 and 2022, it's a huge difference in the vacancy. Because in 2021, it was
Could you please
17%.
clarify the question? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just not sure what you're asking.
When they began renovating.
Do you have any idea when they started doing the renovations on the property?
No, I'm not too sure exactly. I think they kind of do it. It's kind of an ongoing thing. Like someone will move out of one unit and then they'll renovate that unit. So kind of just yeah, as units become vacant, then they'll do the renovations on it and then try to get someone else in there.
Okay, and are you like, do you have any information if the property owner has continued the renovations beyond 31st of December 2022?
Not in our submission. I'm not. We might have. financial statement for the previous year, but not in our submission, no.
Okay, and so yeah, I mean, I had just a few questions on the commercial aspects of it. Now, just give me a second. So your workup is on page 13. So I would like to bring the attention on page 13, please. Now I see that you agree, you kind of agree with the potential income and the vacancy rate proposed by the city. Now, your EGI is different. So are you assigning any value to the vacant leasable space?
No, I guess not really. We've looked at the just the occupied units. So that's why we use this as the effective gross income rather than potential. If we use this as potential, then we'd be double counting the vacancy just because we didn't include it initially, and then we'd be adding the 5% on top of that. So this is just based off the actual revenue that is being generated, and so that's why we've put it as the effective gross income.
Okay, but would you agree that those vacant spaces would add value to the property or have some value?
Yeah, I suppose they would have value still.
Yep. Well, thank you. That'll be all the questions.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kraus, any questions for the applicant?
I have no questions, thank you.
Ms. Anderson, any questions for the applicant? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Thank you. Sorry, the questions I had were asked and answered. Thank you for your presentation.
Okay. On your expenses again. I thought you had mentioned that you had factored out those refurbishments in your calculations. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, we did pull those out. So you could kind of cross-reference I guess the income statement with the table we have on page 11. But yeah, we've just removed refurbishments and those expenses. So yeah, it's not in the table here, and we haven't factored it into our calculation of total expenses.
And so your argument is here that that we should consider all of the actual expenses in the last 3 years in terms of coming to a net operating income.
Yeah, well, I think like we're still suggesting that those refurbishments be excluded. If they were to be included, the expenses for the property would be skewed. Just because, yeah, they do spend a lot on refurbishing these units, and these would not, they wouldn't be what we would consider to be ongoing costs to operate the property. So yeah, we think everything that's in this table should be considered as an expense for this one, because if we included these refurbishments, the expense ratio would be over 70%, which is not really reasonable.
Okay, but I'm actually just talking in generality here. So in your opinion, then this is typical of this apartment block that it attains this kind of net operating income typically every year. Is that what you're implying then? Yeah. This is the normal, not net operating.
Yeah, it's been fairly steady.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, can you go ahead and repeat that?
I was just gonna say, yeah, yeah, it is pretty similar year over year.
Okay. I have no further questions then. Anything in summation from either of the assessors?
No, Mr. Chair, no summation. Thank you.
Anything in summation, Mr. Sharples?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that then brings to a conclusion the matter of this property, item 2666 St. James Street. And that will be all of your presentations for the assessors and the applicant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.
We have heard all the items scheduled today, and this hearing is now adjourned.